So I'm back again. So where were we? Yes, so the solars have been cast down. The majority of their solar fragments, these solar shards, can no longer reincarnate. The Dragon Bloods have to all intents and purposes taken over. The Sidrials have basically vanished from existence and memory, and the Lunars have fled to the very corners of the wild. Oh dear, everything is going to crap. The Solars in their power, they basically created the art of technomagery. As I mentioned before, they created wonders from floating cities to cannons that fired raw essence to even things resembling computers. It was all there. It was all there in this high technology world, in this high technology setting, and then they're gone. The sources of these wonders have suddenly vanished, and the Dragon Bloods are left with a huge mess. For a start, they've defeated the Solars, but basically no one's in charge. All these wonders that all the peoples of creation relied on are suddenly no longer working. It was a mess, big time. The start of the Sidrial's vision of a diminished world had begun. In time, the Dragon Bloods created what was known as the Shogunate. Basically, one to rule them all. The strongest warlord would be the leader of the Dragon Bloods. And this also created turmoil. It was tumultuous. I mean, another warlord comes along, kills that one. Well, crap, now we got a new warlord who's doing his own thing. It didn't work. It didn't work at all. So, what do we do about it? Well, basically, what happened is that crap really hit the fan. I might just say the fall of the Solars occur. That's a bit iffy, actually. Yeah, the fall of the Solars occur, depending on which geek you talk to, either 1,500 years ago or 1,271 years ago. I don't know why we're getting so exact from the current time period in which the game is set. Basically, the Solars fell then, and then, depending on which way you're looking at it, there are either 800 years or 500 years, whatever, of the Dragon Shogunate. And then something cataclysmically bad happened. Cataclysmically bad. From the depths of the underworld, travelling along the lines of essence themselves, these so-called dragon lines that help to maintain the stability of creation, there swept a magical plague known as the Great Contagion. This was so lethal that 9 in 10 people in creation actually died. Excuse me. Do apologise. Just as I was getting really sinister and whatnot as well. So 9 in 10 people in creation actually died. Such was the sort of, as I say, such was the lethality of this plague. Now, what you have to understand is that it was through the primordial's force of will that creation was maintained, actually stayed stable, even with the pillars, the elemental pillars to actually maintain it. Now, when the primordials basically vanished, what happened is that humans who were created by the primordials, this goes into metaphysical stuff a bit, because the game actually basically states, or it doesn't state, but this is the general gist, is that as people are around to appreciate something, say I can look out the window there and I say, well, there's a tree, right? And the whole point is, well, I've seen that tree, I appreciate the fact that tree is there, so that actually cements that tree into a state of physical being. Okay. Now, the problem is that the less people you have in the world, there are less people to actually sort of cement it into a physical state by just simply, I look at something, therefore it's there. And this act alone actually weakened the borders of creation. And in fact, the wild began to encroach, basically, so fast that by the time the Dragon Bloods actually realised what was happening, as I say, creation used to be 8 times bigger than it is now, and That's how fast the borders of the wild went, and it just consumed everything, barring that chunk of land that I showed you earlier. And in fact, the borders of creation were so weakened by the events of this plague, that the fair folk could finally break into the physical realm, manifest themselves in a physical form, and they marched to basically, they marched into the lands and laid destruction to everything in their path. This was basically the time of this world's Armageddon. It was getting very, very close. However, precisely 768 years ago from the game's starting date, a brilliant soldier, a female soldier no less, marched herself into the gardens of the Imperial Palace. And what lay within was what was called the Imperial War Manse. Now, a manse is a place of power where several lines of essence cross and create a sort of power well. Now, in the days of the Solars had created a defensive creation known as war manses. And basically, they were associated with different elements. So, a manse of fire could create huge firestorms. A manse of earth create, earthquakes, so on and so forth. These are elemental tools of mass destruction. The Imperial War Manse is the thing that can control all these tools from a centralized source. Think of it as the seat of power, ultimate power in creation. No one who'd ventured into this manse before had actually lived to march back out again. This woman entered with 3 friends, and she was the only one to come out alive. She activated the power of these manses, and basically, if I just get my map, basically there was a huge battle that took place in, if I can do it, in this area of creation here, which used to be the breadbasket of creation. That used to be the fertile capital. But basically, this is where the majority of the fair folk actually were, sort of, fighting the forces of the remaining dragon-blooded and all that sort of stuff. She activated the war manses and she decimated it. She drove, she drove the fair folk back, and she basically single-handedly saved creation. But the cost was that, this fertile land was decimated. And after all was said and done, she basically had an uncontested power over the Dragonbloods, and up to about 5 years ago in current game time, she seated herself on the throne and became the Scarlet Empress. So, yeah, she's an immensely powerful being. Did I mention, by the way, that if somebody exalts, they basically, the Celestial Exalted basically don't have a lifespan. As soon as they exalt, they to all intents and purposes, become immortal unless a piano drops on their head, or something like that. The equivalent of a piano that could kill an exalted. Dragonbloods tend to actually have a lifespan. Generally speaking, it's around 200 to 300 years. However, the Scarlet Empress, who was, she absolutely was a Dragonblood in the first place, well, she's lived for 678 that people know about, 768 that people know about. So. Something bit different about her. What followed was a time of rebuilding and a time of uneasy peace, where the Scarlet Empress essentially, she brought creation, or the rule of creation, under her thumb. She was a very canny empress, and what she basically did was she kept creation in a state of almost perpetual. She kept it in a state whereby it was almost on the brink of collapse, and she was the pillar, the sole pillar that was supporting everything. It was a very cunning move. A huge amount of Dragonbloods basically took their lineage from her, and she was professed to be a very good ruler. Though volatile, I think would probably be the safest word. Some people have known to be, some people know her to be this kind, sort of beneficial force for good, but at other times, when in one documented case, when her grandson, her great-grandson in fact, basically failed her magnificently. She strangled him to death right in front of anybody inside the Imperial Court. She's not a girl you wanted to mess with at all. Oh dear me, it looks like I'm going to run into a 5-parter for the background alone. I'll be right back, lads and girls and guys, whoever you might happen to be, and I shall conclude this, and then maybe get into fun stuff, who knows? Not this isn't fun, whatever. Catch you in a moment.